Am I on? Yep. Good morning, Spirit Life family. I have married two different lessons into one because I couldn't choose as usual. But I've had an interesting week. As school starts to wind down, the feral kids seem to come more out of their shell. So I had a situation this week, and this is how much we lean on our church family, but I had a situation that I just didn't know how to, I needed somebody to be grossed out with me. I just needed somebody to understand how disgusting that really was and to be able to put themselves in that place. And so I texted it to Susan. And it was really gross. And so she just put the sick little emoji that looks really sick on it back. And I said, I just needed someone to share with. And she put, I guess that's what friends are for. And that's what friends are for. To lean on when you're down, to share the good things, to share the gross things, to be able to say, oh, I feel that. I'm here for it. So today we're going to talk about seasons in life. Not only are we going to talk about it as seasons, as in winter, spring, summer, and fall, and all of you all that said all you have to do is call. I know the James Taylor fans in the audience. So, but also the way that we grow up. The way that we're an infant and then a toddler and then a preschooler and a kindergartner and all the way through life. So these parallels can be spiritual. Life does not stay in one season forever. Winter in real life, in our natural world, lasts a few months, and then we go to spring, and then that lasts a few months. However, we want it to be different each time. We want it to be perfect. And then we have summer, and then we have fall when things start to slow down. And we can count on that, like we know that from January to January, what to expect with the seasons. And we know that in our spiritual walk, we can't control how long winter lasts. Sometimes we seem dry and dead for a very, very long time. Winter could be a day in a spiritual life. Winter could be a week. Winter could be a month. Winter could be years. You could separate and feel separated from God for a very, very long time. And then again, spring and summer could be the same way. Or they could feel like they only lasted a day. But as we journey through our walk with God, we know that the season does not last forever. Now, it's easier to believe that in the natural because we see the changes, and we know when they're coming. We know what to expect from, it's May. From May to August, we know what we're up against. So, but in our spiritual walk, we don't know how long those seasons are going to last. So we have to hang on. And God is not gone during winter, and God does not slow down during fall. He's always there. So, as we look at each trial and tribulation and time of God in our journey, let's say in these places, in dry valleys, we would associate that with winter, difficult wilderness seasons, quiet plains, I would say that's spring when we rest and we're refreshed. Storms. When do storms come? I had to think about this one because storms come all the time. We have blizzards in winter. We have tornadoes and hurricanes in spring. We have thunderstorms in the summer, some of the most terrible thunderstorms, hailstorms in summer. And in fall, it just kind of comes and goes. But we have beautiful colors that comfort us, followed by what appears to be death, but is not death. And sometimes in life we have to understand that what appears to be a separation from God is not a separation from God, but appears, the enemy can make it appear as if you're separating from God. But I've told people many times, when you thought you walked away from God, he followed you, so you didn't. He walked right with you. God is present in every one of these. What season do you think you're in right now? Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let me ask this one. This one is not rhetorical. Where do people usually grow more, in comfort or in difficulty? Difficulty, yes. Dally says difficulty. Susan says difficulty. Yeah, we seem to grow more in difficulty, but we don't like it. It's kind of like getting an assignment back in school. I'm sorry, I can't. You can take the teacher out of the school building, but you can't you can't separate it, whatever. I feel like one of the presidents right now when he got himself into a little situation where he couldn't remember. Anyway, you can have a test with 100 questions and get one wrong. What question are you going to remember on that test? The one you got wrong. You're going to remember that one for the rest of your natural life because you got that one wrong. But that was difficult. The rest were easy for you. So through difficulty, we actually grow and learn. It's not a comfortable place to be, but we do have to have a time of that. And this question requires open and honest conversations with our spiritual brothers and sisters. You know, to be able to go to Sandy or Vicky or Dreama and say, look, I'm depressed. I am in a valley so low that I feel like I am never going to crawl up out of here, and I need prayer, or I need help. Can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? Can you just pray for me? And sometimes I feel like, you know, I think of a landscape, like a valley and a mountain, but then there are those plateaus where you get to a place and you're kind of in that place for a really long time. And I feel like I'm just trudging along straight. Am I ever going to go up? Even if I fall, even if I go down in a valley, it will be something different than the trudging and the just going, because sometimes we find ourselves in a routine. Our alarm goes off, we get up, we go to work, we come home, we do our thing, we go to bed, we get up, we go to work, and it becomes routine. And you know, we need to include God in our routine. We need to break it up. He can help us break it up. You know, in my room this week, I've had to play a lot of instrumental worship because, wow, just wow. Instrumental worship will bring peace into the very lion's den. So let's talk about a couple of people in the Bible. I heard this morning. But, well, never mind. Ezekiel. Let's talk about Ezekiel. Ezekiel finds himself in a valley of dry bones. Not fresh bones, not people who had just passed away that could be resurrected, but dry bones. Everything looked dead, hopeless, abandoned, forgotten. Have you ever felt forgotten by the Lord? Nobody, just me? Okay. Yet God asked, can these bones live? He asked Ezekiel this question, can these bones live? And Ezekiel says, God, only you know that. Like, how would I know this? I need help. Sometimes life feels spiritually dry and prayers seem empty. Sometimes it feels like, and this is where the honesty comes in, and this is where that we have to be honest with one another and not act like everything is happy-go-lucky and happy candy, all the raindrops were lemon drops and gumdrops. Oh, what a rain that would be. It's not always that way. Sometimes it feels empty. It feels like when I'm talking to God that I'm talking to the wall and no one's there listening. And where are you, God? I can't hear you. And maybe I'm complaining so loud I can't hear him, but sometimes it just feels empty. Energy disappears, dreams seem to fade, and then grief settles in, and routines take over. Break up your routine. Many faithful people in scriptures experience dry seasons. Did David experience dry seasons? Yes. Elijah, most definitely. And our old buddy Job, he definitely experienced the dry seasons. Even some of the disciples experienced dry seasons. And as a dry valley does not mean God abandoned you. You may have not purposely, but kind of separated yourself from God. You know, this brings up a thought in my head I'll throw in. Who was there at the cross when Jesus died? Not rhetorical. The women were there. Where were the men? Hiding. I'm just kidding, you guys. Where were the women when they went to go take care of the body? They were right there at the tomb. Where were the men? Hiding. There comes a time when you may say, "Oh, I'm too close. I might get myself in trouble here. I need to lay low for a while." But when Elijah became exhausted and discouraged, and I've heard my aunt say this many times, I just want to go under the juniper tree. Does everybody know what that means? Elijah went up under the juniper tree, and he basically told God, I'm done. I am done. I'm finished. Not I'm done with you, but I'm done with this work that you're having me doing. It's over, and I'd like to turn in my paperwork for my unemployment. But see, God doesn't have that office open. He doesn't have that unemployment office open where you can go turn in your paperwork and be like, I'm done now, thank you. He may have a certificate of retirement or, well, maybe not, a certificate like, good job, but he's never going to say you're done, because you're never going to be done as far as the work of God. You are always going to be on call. You are always going to be waking up with something on your mind that you need to pray about. And sometimes it's things, well, we'll get in that in a minute. But God, how did God respond to Elijah? Did he say, you're done? Okay, bye. See ya, deuces. No. He responded with rest. Like, He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He responded with food, sustenance. He responded with water and gentle care. No condemnation. No condemnation. Elijah said he's finished, and God said, no, you're not. I'm going to take care of you. Sometimes as people, we get exhausted and we need restoration before we get instruction. So we need to be restored and rested, and God knows this. Before we get our next mission or our next instruction on what we're supposed to do, we need to take a time of rest and take a time to seek God and let him love on us, and just let God's people love on us for a while. And then, after that period is over, whether it's a week or 20 years, we go back into God's instruction. But that rest time may take a long time, it may take a short time, but God's there for it. When we're on the mountaintops, oh, that's a great time, isn't it? When you're on the mountaintops. We're going to talk about the mountain of transfiguration for a minute. And I heard this week, and it was so enlightening. When God in Matthew 17, Jesus takes Peter, James, and John onto a mountain, and there Christ is transfigured. His glory shines. Heaven feels close. Mountaintop moments are real. They're powerful. They're a time of answered prayer. They're a time of victory, healing, joy, clarity, spiritual breakthroughs. But it wasn't the first time that Jesus met Elijah. He swooped Elijah right up into heaven, right? He had already met him face to face. He had already met Moses on a mountaintop in Sinai. He had already seen him. So this was a great reunion time for them. They all knew each other. But the disciples didn't understand. They didn't know how this was working. Like, how does he know Moses? Like, he was just born of Mary. Like, how does he know these people? But he knew them from the foundations of the earth. 1 John says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with him, and the Word was God, and the same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. So Jesus was there, because Jesus is God, at the beginning when Elijah and Moses, he saw them born. He saw Moses in the bulrushes. So, who wanted to stay on the mountain? Peter. Peter wanted to stay on the mountain. Let us build altars. Let us stay up here. It feels so good. I just want to stay right here. I haven't made any mistakes for 5 minutes. So he wanted to stay there, but they had to come back down. And most of life is not lived on mountaintops. As we talked about, most of what we learn is in the valleys and in the storms. Faith grows into ordinary days too: work, parenting, grief, responsibilities, waiting, serving. The mountain may inspire us, but valleys often shape us. So let's look at a contrast between valleys and mountains. In the valleys, we often struggle, but we know that through the struggle, we are going to come through, and we're going to have learned something. Birth is a struggle, but at the end there's a beautiful baby. In the mountain, there is victory. In the valley, there is testing. On the mountaintop, there's clarity and wisdom, and hindsight is 20/20, and you can look ahead and you can look from different perspectives. In the valley, often we experience grief, and nothing will take you to a valley faster than grief. Grief can bring you down in a millisecond. But on the mountaintops, there's celebration. In the valleys, there's dependence. And in the mountaintops, there's perspective. In the valleys, there's rebuilding. And in the mountains, there's renewal. And I may have told this before, but I'm going to tell it again. One year, when I was about probably 35, I was a volunteer counselor at church camp because they didn't have enough teenagers to be counselors. So every week, when it was their last year at camp, they went on a quest walk. And this quest walk was a hike. And it was a hike to a place we called Counselor's Chapel. And to get to Counselor's Chapel, at the end, you had to literally pull yourself on a rope to get up the steep hillside to where you were. And when you got there, it was a nice flat place with tables. I don't know how they got them up there. And a fire pit. And so while we're on this quest walk, I remember at each stop, and you had a minister with you who led you through this walk, and he had a talking point at each stop. And one of our talking points was at a large beech tree, and he talked about how big this beech tree is and how old this beech tree was. And one of my campers said, I feel like the lint in the belly button of a flea to God. And I thought, that's a good analogy. And then he said, okay, we're going to, and this certain camper was allowed to talk at that time, but while we were hiking, we were not allowed to talk. We were not allowed to talk. So we go to the next place. And he said, before we move on, and I'm thinking, before we move on, because this was my first quest, and I was like, I didn't know about the rope yet. I didn't know that. Before we move on, what? Before I'm dead. So he said, I want you to take 10 minutes, and I want you to find something in the forest that reminds yourself of you. And we're going to take it up to the mountain, and we're going to talk about it with God. So I'm sitting there while I'm walking around, and I look down, and there's this little nut. And I'm like, perfect. I'm a nut. Everybody knows I'm a nut. This is my thing. I've got it. I am going to sit down for the next 8 minutes. And while I was sitting there, God spoke to me, and he said, you're supposed to be a role model for these campers, and you need to get up. And I thought, okay, but I'm a nut. So I looked over when I stood up, and there was a light shining through the trees, which I know that's not an anomaly, like light shines through trees. But I walked over to where it was, and there was this little shard of clay, like a little piece of clay in the middle of nowhere. And I picked it up, and tears started to come to my eyes, because one of my favorite stories or accounts in the Bible is where the potter goes to the potter's field where there's broken clay. There are just broken pots that people have thrown away. And then he takes them back to his shop, and he makes beautiful, creative creations. And I thought, this is me. I feel broken right now. But God can make me new. And leadership doesn't always feel on a mountaintop. Leadership has to push a lot of times. So we got up to the mountaintop, and I said a prayer. And I said, God, this is me. I'm broken. I'm unhappy in my job. I don't know what to do. I feel like I can't do it anymore. And I'm just giving it all to you. And I threw it in the fire. The next day, I got called to the office. And I was in a position where I couldn't just say, I quit my job. I'm done. The next day, I got a call to come to the camp office for a phone call, which was quite unusual because there were no phones, no lights, no motor cars. Now I know who watched Gilligan's Island. And they said, it was the assistant manager, I was the manager, it was the assistant manager, and she said, Kathy, you're not going to believe this. They've decided to close the store. It'll be closed by the time you get back. Hallelujah! I was like, what? I can't believe it. But that's what led me on my journey to become a teacher. I went back to school. And I feel like that God had his hand in that. He had his hand in it the whole time. So now let's talk about what it's like to be a person. When we're an infant, we're pretty much dependent on our caretaker. We're just like when we're an infant in God, we are dependent on God. When we're a toddler and a preschooler, we start to learn. We start to learn the very basic Bible stories. And then when we're in middle school, we start to learn that David, the shepherd boy that killed the giant, became a king. And then in high school, we know everything. We know all of it. It's great. It's so great. Then you become a young adult and realize you don't know anything at all. And then we become middle-aged and we're able to study more and find out more about God. And then those of us in our golden years are able to study even more and find out things that we didn't know every single day. So, we're going to talk about Ecclesiastes 3. To everything, there is a season. Who else other than Susan said, turn, turn, turn? Okay. All right. So it says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. We might not see the purpose of God in the winter or in the thunderstorms of summer, but he has a purpose. Under heaven, a time to be born, when we're dependent and we need care, and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill. And I thought, how is there a time to kill? Well, there were sacrifices at the time. And if we want to stretch it, we can say there's a time to kill some of the things in our lives that don't belong. A time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. We had fun at Mary's graduation party, didn't we? A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get up and a time to lose. A time to get. I'm already counting down. We're in the single-digit days of having kids for school, so you got to forgive me. I'm thinking to get up, time alarm. A time to get and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence. Whew. And a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboureth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. In his time. His time. We can't control our winter, spring, summers, and falls in the spiritual, but in his time he has control. Also, he has set to the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of his labor. It is the gift of God. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken away from it. And God doeth it, that men should fear before him. That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been. And God requireth that which is past. And moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there, the place of righteousness, that iniquity was there. I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. I said in my heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts. For they which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts, even one thing befalleth them, as the other dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above a beast, for all is vanity. All goeth unto one place, all are of dust, and all turn to dust again. And I'm going to stop there for a second. In fact, I'm going to stop there. Have you ever been so dry in the Lord, so what you feel is dry? You're not, because God is there. But you feel so dry that you feel like Lot's wife. And you feel like if a little wind would come by, you would just blow away, because there's just so much dust, because you're just so dry. And you just don't feel that energy that God gives. You don't feel that relationship the way that you feel like you should. I have some talking points, that's why I stopped. God is the Lord of the valleys too. He's the God of the mountains. He's the God of the valleys. He says, if God does not say, if I walk through the valley, it says, though I walk through the valley, meaning you walk. Don't stop. Keep walking. Keep walking. The valley is not your permanent address. So, here are my discussion closing questions. Why do people often feel closest to God during difficult seasons? It's when they rely on Him the most. It's when you are dependent on God the most. You become the child, the infant, and God just holds you. That's when we can just allow the presence of God to love on us. What can valleys teach us that mountaintops cannot? Lessons. Lessons. Why did Peter want to stay on the mountain? Why did Peter want to stay on the mountain of transfiguration? He was enjoying the moment. He didn't want it to end. How can believers survive spiritually in dry seasons? And that's when I was talking about feeling empty, feeling like Lot's wife. How can you survive during those dry seasons? Yes, you keep walking, you keep praying, you keep doing what God wants you to do, and ignore distractions. Distractions will come. They'll come in the most curious ways. They'll come in the most life ways, like, oh, this is just part of life. No, it's a distraction, and you need to ignore it. All right, so no matter what season of life you're in or what age of life you're in, God is there. God is with you. And it doesn't mean that the season's going to change, and it doesn't mean you have to be an adult all the time. You can be a baby again and just curl up in God's lap and let him love on you. But remember to take time to rest. When you get burnt out and you feel like Elijah under the juniper tree, but there's nowhere to turn in your papers, take a time of rest and wait for instructions after you've been renewed. And that's all I have.